Yeah, 1080.
I don't know, maybe... Yeah, no, we're live now. Yeah, live on YouTube. Oh, okay, so it goes live. Oh, the audio's pretty good. Well... Right, we're just testing new software if for everyone watching, but what I also wanted to do was test out some video reviews. So if you have an Instagram video of anything, see if you can send a link in the chat. I don't know if you can send...
The audio sounds very good.
Yeah, the audio sounds better now? Maybe.
Just the video is...
Right. The delay is kind of annoying, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What are you doing there?
Just leveling the camera.
Right, welcome to the live stream. I don't know if you guys can send Instagram links here. Can someone try sending an Instagram link of a video you want to review of snatching, squatting, deadlifting, benching? Don't send running because Dara's not here. So he's actually over there, but as far as you're concerned, he's not here. Okay, the audio quality or the video quality looks pretty good. Not as good as it could be. Hope everyone's having a great day. I'll try and share it on the screen. Bum, bum, bum. Or if you have any questions, feel free to ask them as well. George, live stream. Yeah, we're trying to get a bit more consistent with the live stream. And we're better organized. Huh? Your link? No, I don't think the links are working. Damn, okay. Hang on. If I... Wait.
Mine just comes up, but it doesn't come up on the thing.
Oh, was everyone... Let me know if you're trying to send the link. We'll see if we can sort this. Yeah. Right, if you go back into the Riverside and try send the link there, does that work?
It's gone.
On your WhatsApp? No, it's there. I didn't delete your WhatsApp messages. Okay, try sending a link, but the matches would appears got deleted. Right, we'll get this sorted in a second. If anyone's in any news while you're waiting for this to get sorted, let me know. I'd literally have no news. Sika Strength is live.
On the Riverside.
Right, Right. Can you send it in the chat? If you send your Instagram link in that chat.
Oh, now I'm on the live stream.
There's Dara. No, that's not what we want.
Am I exit out of this?
Mm-hmm. Who was that guy?
Wait a minute.
Wait a second. Can I allow links? Surely I can, as master of the stream. Surely be to God, I can say, you know what, send links, guys. Right, while we're trying to figure this out, someone send me your Instagram handle, and if there's a link, I'll search for it. New video's been great, thanks Alex. Banana tried to replace the double dots, didn't work. Dara, get out of here. Dara, what are you doing in here? Get out of here.
I thought it was just us guys hanging out.
Favorite metal song? Probably, I'm going to say Hallowed by the Name by Iron Maiden is the GOAT. Drew Long, love the show, thanks. In the clean, how do you focus on not pulling back when you have short legs and a long torso? Just simply keep those shoulders over in front of the barbell. The pulling back is rarely a weakness issue. Sometimes it can be a lower back or mid back issue, but a lot of the times it's simply a focus on that. Now, working on building lower back strength, hamstring flexibility, a lot of times pulling back behind the barbell is also a technical issue more than it is a strength issue. So a lot of times people don't have the correct positions. They start with their shoulders too far behind the barbell as they pull off the floor, and then as they're moving around the knee, they're pulling back even more aggressively, which is often the problem. So Riley, not exactly the answer you probably wanted to hear, but unfortunately in this scenario, not pulling back is something you need to focus on, and there's not a lot of rectifying movements you need to necessarily do first other than focusing on doing it correctly. Some pause cleans might help, maybe some low block cleans might help to focus on that, but don't get too caught up in the variations for this particular problem. When do you breathe in the snatch? Certainly not something you need to be concerned about. Bracing correctly at the start is very, very important, but you don't need to be super concerned with that bracing throughout the rest of it or when you're breathing through the rest of the movement. So bracing the initial pull is important, or fixating yourself, but then after that, then it's not a major concern. Another live, yeah, we're primarily testing something here, but I want to see if we can get it to work. I tore my hamstring and 5 months later tore my calf doing Nordic curls. Jesus Christ, trying to rehab my hamstring, the struggle, Walker, that is very unfortunate. In terms of rehab, just don't kill yourself, just take it day by day. We're going through the process yesterday of what it is you need to do in terms of rehabbing from injuries. So the first is don't panic and don't get too upset about it. Then go see someone, then adjust load as needed, and then do rehab where needed or where it makes sense. And there's always a lot to be said for a little bit of soft tissue work regularly, especially with these kind of things. I find great benefit in them. Do you think part of the value of high volume squats comes from the extended amount of time that the bars in your back force you contract harder and keep the core stable versus lack of leg strength? I would say it's both of those. The extended time forces you to work a little bit harder. It's obviously just more difficult for your body to squat the weight. you get a little bit of a conditioning benefit, or conditioning specific, where work capacity is probably a more specific term for that. And then lack of leg strength. So it's both of those. It doesn't need to be either or in this scenario, certainly not. So just working through the positions, it allows you to practice positions under fatigue without heavy weight, so you can force them a little bit harder or have more of an opportunity to work in the technical positions. Then there is a certain amount of just more volume at a certain task makes you better, it gives you the opportunity. Obviously, that needs to be in conjunction with smart programming at the right time and then with the right progressions, because obviously we couldn't do high volume training for a whole block and then just hope to go for a heavy single a week later. In a lot of cases, we obviously need to smoothly move through those sets and reps. So high volume training, very useful at the right time in the right context, lots of benefits to it. And what you said, I think, are all true. Is there a limit to the amount of conditioning or cardio you can do while on a machine while doing a squat program like the RTA? So this, Drew, entirely depends on your current strength levels. It depends on your current conditioning levels and then your particular goals with training at the moment. So if you're, let's say, relatively weak or not as strong as you could be, and if you're very well conditioned, you can probably do a lot of conditioning on a machine compared to someone who's pretty strong but not very well conditioned. Or if you've got someone who's not strong or well conditioned, who's out of shape, you're not going to be able to do a lot of both of these things. So Drew, if you're someone who's can put down 2 hours zone 2 at a decent pace on a bike, you know, if you're doing, I don't know, 200 watts for an hour, 2 hours, and it's barely knocking some dust off you, you can probably do a lot of conditioning on a stationary bike when you're running something like the RTA. However, if 10 minutes of a warm up on the bike is making you a little bit sweaty and a little bit uncomfortable, then you're not going to be able to do a lot with something like a squat program like the Road to Anywhere squat program. But it is something that is very, very valuable for people's training. So I'd highly recommend you do it, but just don't get into it too aggressively when you start a program like the RTA, because obviously we don't need to overload the system like that. But if you're in good shape, you should be fine. Daily live streams. We're definitely going to do more frequent live streams. So we've got a really good system for how we record our content at the moment, and we've got a great editor, as you might have noticed, because the YouTube editing has improved a lot probably in the last year. How long have we been doing new videos? About 4 months, 3 months, I think. 4 months now, I'd say.
3 or 4 months, yeah.
We're very happy with it. And to be honest, the biggest bottleneck there is actually getting stuff recorded ahead of the time and a place to record them. So obviously that gym, as you might know, is one of our friends. Darry used to own that gym. He set it up years and many, many, many years ago, about 10 years ago. And we're currently trying to set up our own unit so we can record stuff more often, more frequently, to not be absolutely harassing Teddy, the gym owner, who's very kindly gave us the gym and will not take any money from us. Now, he is a long-term friend of ours, very, very long-term at this stage. So it wouldn't be in him. No, we wouldn't charge Teddy, although we probably would charge Teddy just out of spite, you know. So yeah, we have to make a bit more time for live streams. My gym has recently received a safety squat bar and I want to play around with it for the next few weeks. Would you recommend they use RTA 1, 2, or perhaps the front squat program? I would do the RTA 2 with the safety squat bar and give you an opportunity to kind of ramp in with more volume, so it'd be a little bit less aggressive. Now, the only thing is finding your single. Do a reasonable single with the safety squat bar first to see where you're at, so then you can get a valuable metric to put in for the RTA part 2 on the app. So something like, let's say you can do 200 kilos high bar regularly. You might do a decent single at 180 on the safety squat bar, so put in 180 or something similar like that. But the RTA 2 would definitely be more productive because it'll give you a bit of a less steep learning curve with the safety squat bar. You know, conscious popular belief, we don't actually hate the safety squat bar. Popular belief being us saying we don't like people using the safety squat bar for most scenarios, but you know, if you've got an immobile rugby player, if you're injured, safety squat bar can be very good. It's just when we're talking about in the context of powerlifting, the high bar usually wins over quite well. I notice high volume squats always make me feel more prepared for heavy weights versus it being lack of leg strength. Yeah, so it's, in that case, Edwards, it's simply what are you lacking in regards to your own training. You know, if your leg strength is fine, but your work capacity is not up to par, then you'll see the benefits to your work capacity and that will hopefully improve your 1RM at the end. But if you're someone who's got, you know, great work capacity, but not a lot of leg strength, you'll get the other benefits from it. Why does the ceiling look so low? Because it is so low. The ceiling is so low, Evan Lee, because this room is tapered. It's like one of those really narrow rooms. You remember the really old Willy Wonka? or no, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, yeah. You know, that tunnel was getting smaller and smaller. This is what this room is. And if you don't do your high volume squats, the room gets smaller and it traps you in there. Missing the new show. Price, you know what? We might do a special just for Spotify, a little more relaxed one, because there's a few big weightlifting things that's happened recently. And we might throw one up on the Spotify. We might even do it tomorrow. We'll see. What do you think there?
Oh, I never make promises.
Dara doesn't make promises, but if we get time, we might do one tomorrow, a special, because there's been a few things happening that I think would be worth talking about. Amount of cardio on a stationary bike recommended while RTA1. I found in past pushing cardio during becoming horse quite challenging. So playfully painful. My goodness, some kind of BDSM name. What I would recommend, this is what I usually recommend for weightlifters. If you're not very well conditioned, start off with 2 separate sessions a week. Usually a stationary bike is best, but a rower can work as well. I want you to do 2 15-minute sessions. Then about every month, add 5 minutes each of those sessions. And then every month, keep adding 5 minutes each of those sessions until you get to about 6 months or so. And you're somewhere around 45 plus minutes. And then you can keep going longer if you want. So it's just, you know, again, it depends on what kind of shape you're in, what kind of conditioning you've done before. So conditioning is really interesting because it's really easy come, easy go. You know, you can reduce your conditioning, your max intensity by a significant degree if you stop doing something for 3 or 4 weeks. Whereas you can increase it by a huge degree again in 3 or 4 weeks. But then there's also benefits. You know, if you did loads of conditioning for decades, you're just going to find it easier to get back in shape and maintain some of that. So playfully painful, just to say that name again, it really just depends on what kind of shape you're in currently and how your max capacity is. So for a lot of people who might be watching us, you're going to get 1 or 2 scenarios. You're going to have people who are doing athletes and they're really well conditioned. And so, you know, doing a couple of hours on the stationary bike to them is nothing. Whereas if a lot of the strength training athletes, I think we need to do another video on conditioning for strength. You can never do too many videos on it. Now that I'm thinking about this, it's work capacity. I think if there was a goal for the year 2025 for make conditioning for Sika Strength's message to the public, it would be make conditioning and work capacity great again. It's so valuable. It's just, we've been on this since the start of the year, I think. Obviously, we've always encouraged people to do it, but when it comes to conditioning, it's just incredibly valuable for the average strength training athlete. It's obviously incredibly important for your general health. It couldn't be more important. Conditioning, muscle mass, and strength training are all hugely important habits that you should be part of, right? But at the same time, when it comes to just the benefits for strength training, it's just so hard to get away from how useful conditioning is. And a lot of times people don't appreciate how useful conditioning is for their strength training until they do a lot of it. And then they're like, wait a minute, I feel so much better. I can do more training. I feel a lot fresher. I don't feel tired going up the stairs. You know, it's crazy how out of condition a lot of people are when it comes to strength training. And what's funny is that the conditioning you need for strength training compared to a well-conditioned athlete is absolutely abysmal. It's so small. But again, then on the flip side, the strength a lot of strong athletes within would possess compared to a well-conditioned athlete is very, very different as well. So great thing as well about it is it's actually pretty easy to maintain if you just stay consistent with it. And all types of conditioning work really well for strength training. Sorry, I'm just making a little thumbnail here for this live stream. Absolutely shotgun editing, ambush editing. Oh my God. So yeah, big on conditioning. Year 2025 will be the year of do your conditioning for sports, for strength training. Sometimes then you get a condition where you'll have athletes, let's say a rugby player might be really conditioned on the pitch, but in terms of work capacity for strength training is quite low because they might not have ever pushed that capacity in the gym. So things are obviously quite specific, but also pretty broad, which is great. Right, what other questions have we? BPC 157 is very helpful. I've heard it is. I've heard those peptides are really useful for recovering from injuries. You ever hear about those peptides there?
Heard one or two things.
Heard one or two things, yeah. Had an athlete recently. Won't tell you what I use because it's none of my business and that's not what we do here. But had a grade 1 torn lateral meniscus. 3 weeks later, no pain. Confirmed with an MRI. Grade 1 lateral torn meniscus.
Why don't we sell peptides?
I don't think it's legal.
Oh, isn't it?
No, I don't think so. But if we could sell peptides, it'd be Sika Sleep and peptides. Oh my God. Maybe someday. We should look into that. Ask ChatGPT. Ask, is it legal? I have a lot of trouble keeping tension in the turnover on the snatch. It's causing some crash and really poor lockout. So I would be looking at mobility. Do you have the ability to hit the requisite positions? Is your overhead position strong? So obviously a lot of the muscles involved in locking out the barbell overhead, Joshua, are also involved in that turnover. So if your overhead is really weak, you're going to have a lack of ability to turn the barbell over in a powerful position because our traps, our mid back, our shoulders, our lats, all these are really useful in turning it over and stabilizing it. So if we're weak in one area, we're probably going to be weak in the other area. So big thing I say with here is if you've got that mobility, I'd be definitely absolutely looking into a lot more upper body strength. May I suggest the body armor program on the Sika Strength app? But just to throw that out there, maybe strict press program would be where I'd be looking at. But Joshua, I'm going to say, I've got a hunch and say upper body strength is probably the problem here. Now, technique obviously is probably an issue. But if it's both crashing and you feel weak in the turnover, get a bit of, get up at the, little bit.
So, peptides are illegal to be sold in Ireland.
Right.
If a doctor prescribes them and gives them to you, they're not legal.
Go away. Are you a doctor?
Not yet.
Do we know any doctors?
Any doctors in the chat?
Any doctors in the chat who'll work for Sika Strength? Is there a scenario where you would prescribe hip thrust for athletes, not Olympic weightlifting? I'm going to say no. There hasn't been a scenario where you've prescribed them. So I'm imagining heavy weighted hip thrusts here. Definitely places where you've done single leg glute bridges, stuff like that, but I know it's not specifically what you're asking. They can be useful in some contexts for rehabbing or mobility. But in terms of heavy hip thrusts, I'm not adverse to them, just haven't seen them be that useful. What can you get out of a hip thrust that you can't also get and more from a back squat and a stiff-legged delt, for example, or an RDL? Okay, not against them, just don't really see a big benefit from them. In terms of weightlifting athletes you mentioned, there was, I think it was Ruslan Nurdionov, Uncle Russ. I actually saw him using them a bit. And I think Miso did a bit of them as well. But for regular athletes, do you ever use hip thrusts?
No.
He's saying no. I'm shaking her head. I can't think of a scenario where we already did. Okay, regards peaking on accessories, you guys spoke favorably about having high pull-up, dip, and seal row numbers. I assume you don't chase PRs in those weightlifting programs. Any PRs chased during off-season? You know, we like the kind of volume PRs for the assistance work. So 1 rep max pull-up is probably an exception there, but we're not really going to go for a 1 rep max seal row or 1 rep max dip. But higher volume PBs of those, so your kind of sets of 5 or your sets of 8s or maybe even your sets of 10 on the dips or the pull-ups or the rows. Now, the reason you kind of want to be slightly lower volume, higher intensity, or it's nice to peak the weighted pull-up, is the fact that you can see quite a big discrepancy between people's higher volume pull-ups versus their 1 rep max pull-up, So you might see someone who could do not a lot of weight for a set of 10, but could do a decent single on a weighted pull-up or chin-up with a bit of weight, and there's definitely benefits to that. So I do like the idea of pushing those. I will say dips do sometimes cause problems, a bit pain with people. Sometimes people get shoulder issues, sometimes get a little bit of pain here in that kind of little, where you used to have a fish bone, a fin. You ever hear that? Some people have pain here, but they just have an extra muscle. They're basically fish. You ever heard about that?
Never heard of that. In their pectoral?
Yeah, sometimes you think you're having a heart attack. You're like, "Argh." But some people actually have.
That every day.
I think no, that's probably is just a heart. Dara's saying he feels like he has that, but he's just actually having a heart attack. But we're big fans of definitely pushing the volume PBs for the weight. So not necessarily going for a heavy single on the seal row, which you can if you want, but you really like the idea of pushing those. What are your top strength exercises for BJJ or striking? Back squats, some kind of pull, a hinge, whether it's low block pulls, RDLs, stiff-legged deadlifts, just good old-fashioned deadlifting is a great one. Actually really like benching for jiu-jitsu athletes. Don't do a lot of strict press. A lot of times jiu-jitsu athletes overhead mobility and strikers is abysmal, brutal, absolutely terrible. So when it comes to this just pressing side of things, bench press, and you can get a lot more weight moved as well. And you know, one session per week of bench pressing gets you a lot of benefits to that. Then any amount of core work, any other amount of single leg work or assistance work, you know, Bulgarian split squats, lunges, pull-ups, dips, just the good old-fashioned basics. But if we're talking top strength exercises, it would be barbell back squat, some kind of pulling or hinging movement that with a barbell that's pretty heavy and that you can load up safely and use good technique. And then bench for the upper body is is very useful for a lot of jiu-jitsu athletes, especially in jiu-jitsu. We have a lot of athletes who keep their body weight artificially lower than what they might do. And a lot of times they're talented athletes and have a predisposition to be a bit heavier and a bit more better shape. And they benefit a lot from that extra upper body strength, especially, you know, if you're 60 kilos and your opponent can't bench body weight, but you can bench 100 kilos, that makes a huge difference. Obviously, technique being equal, but even if technique is not equal, you know, there's a lot of bullshit. Just stand up in jiu-jitsu if you want. So when it comes to the big barbell movements, a lot to be said for them. Single leg stuff is important, but not as important for BJJ. You find the big hitters very, very useful. A lot of Brazilian jiu-jitsu athletes' mobility in certain places is terrible in the lower body. So in the upper body usually, but typically you'll see is a lot of times ankle mobility can be terrible for some reason in jiu-jitsu athletes and often lack that kind of ability just to sit comfortably in a squat, which benefits them hugely in a lot of positions. And you can't go wrong with some heavy dumbbell rows as well for jiu-jitsu athletes. No straps, get a little bit of the grip going in there. Best home gym substitution for leg extensions. Ooh, that's a good question. Home gym. So obviously you'll see in the programs we'll do a lot of banded leg extensions because people don't have access to that. I would say what I would do here is really high box step up. So I'm talking about your leg is essentially at the bottom of a squat. A single leg step up, but really deep would be what I'd be doing here. You've got a lot of quad extension here. Load them up as well. That's what I'd be doing. Yeah, that was a good answer. I'm happy with that one. Really, really deep box step ups is what I would do here. Weightlifting champs, what class most excited for Akbar? 110 kilo Akbar. That's all. If they just had the 110 kilo class and just got rid of everyone else and just let Akbar do his lifts, that's all I want to see. It'd be interesting to see what shape Carlos is in as well. But for me, Akbar is the most exciting thing I see here. We could see Abdo Jans as well. There's a couple of the Nordic girls who are lifting big weights recently. Will be very interesting to see. But yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, Akbar lifting is what I want to see. We'll try and do a live stream if it makes sense. If my goal is an improved pause squats, how much of a squatting should be non-paused? How much of my squatting should be non-paused? So if it's pause squats, just do pause squats all the time. You don't really need to worry about it. So if you think about this in the short term, let's say your goal is 3 to 6 months, you want a bigger pause squat now, but you're going to return to bigger or regular squats in the future, just switch to that pause squatting as your main squat at the moment. But if it's a long-term thing, you know, if you have someone who can back squat, for example, 250 kilos, they're just going to be much stronger at pause squats because that absolute weight is moved once they've gotten used to it. But if it's a short-term block thing, you'll see a better realization a little bit faster on your pause squat. Like for example, when I did 300 kilos, I did a pause squat with 250 kilos with no belt, no sleeves, no shoes on as well actually. And it was like 3 seconds or so. And I was hardly doing any pause squats. I was doing the odd one messing around in training. My best ever pause squat is actually 270, but in the short term, just do pause squats. If it's a long-term goal, then regular squatting will make you stronger in general, to give you the better option to PB your pause squats. I feel like Clarence made pause squats so much more popular than they were ever going to be, ever.
Yeah.
Snatch grip places the bar below my hip crease. Had to narrow due to an old injury. Is lower contact okay? Yeah. So literally, Anton, when you're snatching, let me get myself. You just make contact a little bit lower here, so you're just bringing those hips in and extending up. So you're just making contact a little bit lower. But the main thing is you're keeping it really close as you're moving through. As you're moving through the pull, you're focusing on keeping it close after contact, but don't bend your arms to make higher contact because you don't need to. Oh, Edward says, thanks for your time. $10. My goodness. Feel like a hooker. Am I a stripper? It's $10.
The middle of the rugby front row.
That's enough. That's enough. Yeah. Launch. Let's take a sock off. Can you should do assault bike intervals? Yes, whatever the question is. After 45. Oh, no. Nope, sorry. After 45 minutes of zone 2, any harm to this? I would prefer, generally on how we structure it, is you keep the conditioning sections separate. In the same week is fine, but I don't think you're going to get as good a quality assault bike session doing intervals after a long time of zone 2. So if you're very in shape, which you might be, you'll still get a good session in, but you'll definitely get a better session if you come in and just do that assault bike session by itself. Zone 2 in the same week as assault bike sessions or high intensity work, perfect. Do that all the time. In fact, that's what most of the conditioning would look like, but not in the same session at the same time because you're just not going to get a great assault bike session. So I wouldn't do it purely for the fact that you're just not going to have as great an output on this. What are your not immediately obvious recommendations on training female athletes? I'm focusing on extra leg strength as opposed to men due to anatomy and hormonal stuff, but any other tips? So what you see can be done, but not necessarily need to be done, is that female athletes can push volume to a higher intensity for a little bit longer. So let's say it's 4 weeks for men. You'll see female athletes can go sometimes 5 to 6 weeks pretty comfortably. A lot of times smaller jumps are probably needed in terms of the, let's say if it's, I'm not sure if you're talking about weightlifting specifically here or just strength training in general, but in weightlifting, smaller jumps, but for longer work quite well. Like literally had a scenario where I've had a male and a female athlete, a similar age, same body weight, similar maxes, and you'll consistently see that the female athlete will recover better for consecutive weeks. And this athlete she was back squatting like 150 kilos. He was back squatting like 160 or 165. And you'll see he's just able to tolerate that volume for a little bit longer. Now, on the other side, what you sometimes do see is, regardless of body weight, you'll see that the mobility and joint pain can often go hand in hand. So sometimes you might be hypermobile, and that can cause some issues. And sometimes, obviously, I don't have any well, there is definitely research on this, but this is purely anecdotal from what I see. But sometimes aches and pains seem to happen more consistently with female athletes that aren't necessarily injuries, and it just might be the sample size I've had so far. But it definitely seems to be. What are your thoughts on that, Fitz? Do you think, I feel like female athletes get a bit more aches and pains in general?
I think they have more fluctuation in inflammatory levels over the course of a month.
Yeah.
Causes more.
Yeah, it could be the hormonal thing in terms of obviously across the months. I think you just see that. So watching for that, seeing if you can address that. I haven't seen the menstrual cycle affect things that much. So obviously if you as an individual have a certain intensity in pain or disruptions to your life during your menstrual cycle at certain points, then you'll know. But in terms of performance, I haven't seen it need to be an issue where you need to plan for it. You know, obviously if you're someone who just have a particularly bad time and it lasts for an extended period of time, then you might need to. But I haven't seen it be a thing where, oh, you got to plan for it like this. Now, at the same time, more things are very similar than not. It's more of the nuances around training rather than necessarily the training itself. Like exercise variation and frequency are very similar. But the main thing is you do see those aches and pains seem to happen more often. So you need to watch for that. And then there's the possibility of extended volume and intensity where needed, but again, not necessary to take into account with training, but it is possible you might see that yourself. Mind going over how you all became a full-time content creators? I love your guys' stuff. Oof, how did we do it? So originally we started with a podcast, and then we did the podcast nearly weekly for, I think, like 2 years. Yeah, exactly 2 years, 2 and a bit years. And during that time we were coaching. I was working full-time selling programs. Darren was doing his masters. And we were essentially, the company was just saving up money. And eventually got to a stage where we had enough finances for 6 months full time. So that took about 2 years. And eventually one day I was like, this there, I'm leaving. And then Dara said, fuck this, I'm going to leave as well. And then the rest is history. That was 5 years ago. So we've been in operation since 2018, I think. So we just had an opportunity to essentially use some funds we'd saved up with the company. Obviously, you pay taxes on, and you'd gone through accountants, and we were like, hey, this is how much we need for 6 months of wages and to run the business, and then hopefully we'll make money in those 6 months. Now it's a lot different. It's feasible now that you could literally do it in a month if you were really good with content and stuff went well for you. But so it's important to remember, we're not actually full-time content creators, YouTubers. We're actually a full-time coaching business. And then we make the content for the business. So we don't rely on viewership, or we don't rely on sponsorships. We don't take any sponsorships. We'll take free stuff the other time, but nobody's paid us yet. Or sorry, we haven't taken anyone's money yet to advertise things. Now, there's been good offers, but not big enough. Like, we'll sell out eventually. Like, if someone offers, you know, an absolute wallop of cash, you know, we're talking, someone says they'll give us 50 grand to advertise something, you know, and if it's reasonable, like, we'll do it. Like, you know, we'll take it. But, you know, currently, what's funny is when people email us and they're like, will you advertise our stuff? We just keep giving larger numbers. And funnily enough, recently people in the last year have been saying yes, but then we're like, oh, you've called our bluff. We don't want to advertise your stuff, sorry. We're just wondering if you'd say yes to this outrageous number. So eventually someone will say yes to the most outrageous number, and then you'll know. Then you'll know we sold out. But yeah, remember, we're a business first. We've been coaching for a long time before that, and training ourselves. So, you know, we had the, dare I say, expertise and the services to offer. So, but there's lots of opportunities now. There's a load of those community things that you can do and help people out with. There's loads of ways to make websites cheaper, services. I would say, more than ever, it's easier to make a good wage with content than it's ever been in the history of the world. However, it's probably just as difficult to have a very successful company that makes a lot of money. So if you have a wage, I don't know, let's say it's $3,000 or euro a month, whatever your currency is, then now it's easier than ever. In September of 2025, this is the best time ever to try and make a wage from a hustle like that. But, you know, if you want to do something like, you know, I don't know, 100 grand a month, let's say, something crazy, you know, it's just as hard as ever, but making a wage, now is a good time to do it. Have you heard about strength conditioning for male ballet dancers? No, we have not. Need to jump very high and lift partners while maintaining, developing, increasing good mobility. So if you give me a few minutes to think about it, there'll probably be some nuances, but if in terms of lifting other partners or jumping really high, probably keeping your body weight relatively low, it would be same as any other athlete, you know, any kind of maybe basketball or swimming or Jiu-jitsu or something like that. It's just strength training, back squatting, building muscle mass, practicing plyometrics when needed, building work capacity. It wouldn't be anything crazy specific. I've yet to see a sport where it didn't respond to that. Any thoughts on Hack versus Engelberg? Yes, I do, James. Dylan, Fulbright. I want to see them conventional deadlifting. And I know you're not supposed to say sumo isn't cool, but sumo's not cool. It's not cool. So, and I see Colton is actually conventional deadlifting a lot in training. So if they do it on dots or whatever, and they're both either using wraps or no wraps, and they're both conventional deadlifting, then I'll be pretty chuffed. But if someone's sumo deadlifting Colton sumo, I'm not as interested. And I think we've kind of talked about this a bit. So yeah, if it's conventional, super interested. I'll be interested anyway to see how it turns out, of course, but we'll see how it goes. The suggestions for improving the second pull of the clean: go faster. A lot of people make too much contact but slow down the barbell. So your whole idea here is move the barbell as fast as possible. You get under the barbell as fast as possible, but it happens at the same time. It's like this: barbell is going up, you're going down. You want as smooth a contact as possible. Use the upper body to pull that second barbell over as you're pulling under. So both of these happen as quickly as possible. You don't want this. You don't want barbell contact, bar go up, then you go down. It's like this: as barbell's making contact, you're going down underneath it, and then you make the beautiful rack position. Any advice for a 42-year-old? I've run through RTA 1 and 2, didn't drop reps, but fucked me up. Likely had to range my life around it. Love you, lads. So they RTA 1 is hard. You know, we make no bones about it. Sometimes people are like, this was really hard program. You're like, yeah, that's the whole idea. It was a program made for people who wanted to get a bigger back squat in 8 weeks, despite everything else. So that's the whole idea of it. They're tough programs. RTA 2 should be a little bit easier to run, but any advice for 42-year-olds? Usually conditioning, body fat levels and muscle mass is probably an issue here. So being in good condition, good work capacity, having a lot of cardio like we were talking about earlier in the stream is incredibly important. And you usually see that as lifters get older, and if they haven't done a lot of training when they're younger, extending out the amount of time you spend in a work capacity phase or a general physical preparedness phase is incredibly important. So I'd be looking at improving your work capacity, running something like the off-season athlete and doing some conditioning alongside that on the app would make a huge difference. And I bet if you did this for 3 or 4 months and then you came back and run the squat programs, you'd see a massive difference. And of course, weak, but also weak, you cannot forget mobility. In older people is entirely possible. You can be as mobile as at any other point in your life except for when you're probably pre-puberty. You just need to put an absolute metric ton of work into that mobility. Owen Boss Captain. That's not how you spell my name. It's not O-W-E-N, all right? So, should be a bit trained before running RTA program. Should I start RTA with 80% of the current max since not trained? So, Ultra Blue, if you're super out of shape, do a little bit of back squatting for a couple of weeks before you start the program. But really important, cannot emphasize this enough. Only use a max that you have done and that you have done recently. So if you did 200 kilos 5 years ago and you've only done 170 since, and last week you could barely hit 150, just use an accurate representation of your max. That's the most important thing. The app adjusts your load if something goes wrong. You input your session, and if needs be, it'll change it. So the most important thing here for everyone, whether you're in shape or not, is using a max that is recent and an accurate representation of your ability to do the back squat. Excuse me. Are there any plans on doing an online seminar on the jerk as you done the snatch, or will some high quality video on the jerk come in the future? Moritz, there'll definitely be a video on the jerk in the future. The next weightlifting videos coming up are Anton fixing my snatch and then squatting with Gabriel and Anton. They're the next 2 weightlifting videos coming. But yes, there definitely will be a jerk video, absolutely. Best way to eat to gain strength while maintaining body weight. Best way to eat to gain strength while maintaining body weight. Lift 3 times a week in the morning, fasted. Now, best way to eat to gain strength while maintaining body. So, if you're maintaining body weight, then there's not a huge amount that's going to have a meaningful impact on your strength training, unless you're drastically under eating carbs or you're drastically restricting your body weight. So if you're fighting at 1,800 calories a day to stay at your current body weight, but realistically you should probably be 5 or 6 kilos heavier, then that would make a massive difference to your strength training. Currently lifting 3 times a week in the morning fasted. I wouldn't be lifting fasted. Usually carbs before and after training provides the most benefit, certainly after waking up without eating anything. Now, there's tons of people who have great recipes and particular things that they like to do pre and post training, but carbs before and after training, and then obviously protein levels, while aren't going to make a drastic difference in the short term, probably over the lifetime of your training, sufficient protein levels are going to make some difference to the quality of muscle mass. I wouldn't be lifting fast as the main thing from here, but outside of that, adjusting your macros isn't going to make a massive difference unless you're low carb or low protein currently, which you shouldn't be for training. Are there any nuances to programming the clean for weightlifting? I find cleans at a given percentage harder than the equivalent for snatch or jerk. No, it's just clean is heavy. It's a heavier barbell. It needs to move fast. You need to front squat it up. That's totally normal. It's only until I've tapered that I can begin to think about doing 95% cleans. That sounds Khalil Blue. That sounds perfectly normal. That makes perfect sense. Cleans are something you need to be in good shape for. Snatches are something that you can finesse a little bit more and you can consistently do those higher percentages, but compared to a clean, totally normal. That is absolutely normal. There's no nuances in terms of clean versus snatch. It just, you need to be in good shape, you need to put the work in, and then you have a time frame with which you can hit those heavy cleans, and then it just feels like shit after that, because that's weightlifting. Okay, that's life. Regarding squat frequency, if I recall correctly, you lads spoke favourably about programming 2 back squat, 1 front squat in the week. Is this only for you athletes? Should athletes stay away from this kind of program? So this is generally for weightlifters. Most weightlifters you'll find can tolerate the 2 back squats plus 1 front squat. If you are not a weightlifter, 2 back squats a week should be efficient, or 2 squats. Frequency is usually perfect for most people, but 2 back squat, 1 front squat is definitely okay for most adults, unless you're very, very out of shape. And obviously the programming makes sense in that regard. So, you know, if it's really high volume or you're maxing a lot, then it's not going to make sense. What is your view on the value of anti-rotational core work for strength weightlifting? Big fans of anti-rotational work. We're big fans of any core work. The best thing about core work is any amount of core work works, because most people don't train their core frequently enough. So doing any core work is very beneficial. Core rotational, anti-rotational, flexion, extension, static, anything, incredibly beneficial. So we're big fans of that. Pale-off press, one of the most frequent core exercises in most of our programs. The Pavlova press, as my head wants to call it sometimes. Favorite drills to fix early arm bend the clean? Paxton, there is no drill. Unfortunately, it's a disaster, but the only way you can fix this is by practicing reps where you don't bend your arms. Slowing down the barbell speed can make a big difference temporarily, but you can't spend all your time doing slow pull snatches or slow pull cleans. So the best thing you need to do here is essentially practice reps where you don't bend your arm. It's the hardest thing to fix. I don't know why. It's not that hard to keep your arms loose, but it is undoubtedly, without a doubt, I can confidently say it's the hardest thing for people to fix in the amateur population. They cannot let go of the tension in their arms. It's so difficult. Unfortunately, the only way we found after 30 plus years of weightlifting and combined endurance, or in weightlifting, coaching and lifting, is you just have to do reps where you don't do it, and then ingrain that sufficiently enough till your body goes, okay, the preferred way of lifting the clean is not bending my arms too early. You should be able to do it straight away. You should be able to, but what you don't have is you need someone standing there with a stick and they're just smacking you every time you bend your arms, and the little body will learn a lot faster. But unfortunately, you can't sell a product like that because I think it's illegal. Or is it? Who knows? Haven't been training for 6 months because of traveling. I went to get back into rugby and training, Marcus. I was thinking of running RTA and bench, a bit more aggressive in the gym to get into shape. Marcus Boxall, are you in the Northern Hemisphere or the Southern Hemisphere? What do you think Marcus is from there? Northern.
Question?
He said, haven't been training 6 months because of travel, want to get back into rugby and training. So if you're coming into your off season, RTA and bench should be perfect. If you're you're playing your season and you're out of shape, definitely don't run the RTA and the bench program. Run the in-season rugby program on the app, which should be perfect if you're coming into in-season and you're getting back into shape. If you're out of shape, first of all, you definitely need to get back to some conditioning. You need to get back into some high-intensity interval training. Zone 2 stuff is nice, but if you want to get it back faster in a good quality, assault bike intervals are number 1. Look up the Norwegian 4x4. It's fabulous. It's terrible to do, but it's fabulous for conditioning. And then running the RTA and bench would be super alongside that, if you're in the off season or you haven't started playing rugby yet. Thank you, Nancy Female. Super good insight. No worries. They are martial art judo athletes with general strength and power training. Yeah, anecdotal aches and pains. Definitely an interesting one. I must see if there's any research now to think about it. Menstrual cycle scares me at the explosivity in the ACL joints. I've seen some research and was curious. Extended pushing is so cool. Thanks. Cool. I'm looking to build work capacity. Could you recommend a couple exercises to best do this? I've been building up zone 2 cardio, HIIT with high volume squatting, weightlifting. If you're weightlifting, then cardio and HIIT stuff and high volume work will be perfect. You don't need to worry too much about that. It'd be different if you're playing a different sport, but if you're building work capacity for weightlifting, just that general density of movement should work sufficient. So I think you've got your bases covered there. In order to total 250, what strength numbers do you need? So are we saying 250 is probably 110, 140, maybe 115, 135, 110, 140. I would say you'd want to be comfortable squatting 200 kilos. I mean comfortable, not absolutely balls out. A comfortable 200 squat, probably a max of 210 to 15 would be a good place to be at here, Riley Jackson. Philip, oh hello, thanks for SEK. Where's that from? Sweden? Hi Garth, do you enjoy any ice hockey S&C? How would your opinion differ this from rugby? Funnily enough, I don't think we've ever encountered any S&C for ice hockey. Oh, we have? Have you?
Yeah, went to one years ago.
Oh, Darren had a client doing S&C for hockey. Was it any different to rugby?
Not that different. A lot of lateral work.
A lot of lateral
I
work.
think that might have been down to some knee injuries he had.
Oh, he had some knee injuries specifically. So Darren's saying a bit of more lateral work. To be honest,
Very similar.
very similar. Most sports are so similar, and we just see it time and time again. Well, for ice hockey, I'd probably be doing a bit more single leg work over compared to what rugby players would be doing. So I'd be doing some more split squats. I push the Bulgarians pretty far. I'd be doing consistent Cossack squats. I would be making sure that my adductors are nice and loose and strong. We don't need to be tearing knee groins if we get into an angle where we're over-exerted. So soft tissue work on the adductors, making the adductors and adductors pretty strong would definitely be something I'd be looking at. But outside of that, it'd be pretty similar. I don't think there'd be a huge difference. What is the best exercise for judo? Back squats, pulling, hinging, whatever variation you like. Deadlifting would be priority number one there, but an RDL or stiff leg deadlift will work perfectly. Some weighted pull-ups, some dumbbell rows would be the best, absolutely, for judo. How do you deal with knee pain? Just train around it, and if it flares up, reduce squats and do volume on leg extension machine. First of all, this is a step process for dealing with injuries. First of all, don't get upset or don't freak out, don't do anything stupid. Then go see someone if you can find someone who's a doctor or a neuromuscular therapist or whatever, physiotherapist, someone who can help you address and rehab the knee pain. Then manage load, so don't do anything that hurts too much. Then do rehab where needed if prescribed or you know that rehab works. So that's the Sika Strength step process for dealing with pain, which is just be sensible. Ultra Blue, I'm only messing about the own. I had to drop weightlifting 3 times a week to accommodate my physical therapist assistant school and working the weekends. Can I still make reasonable progress on my total during this time? Absolutely, without a doubt. I'm only snatching 3 times a week at the moment. Gabriel said he's only snatching twice a week. Now, obviously, it's a bit different for your scenario, Andrew, but 3 times a week, you definitely can, without a doubt. What does the weightlifting off-season look like? Weightlifting off-season is just usually less snatches and clean and jerks, probably a bit more volume on the assistance exercises, probably a bit more volume on the strength training exercises. What you'll see with a lot of international weightlifters in the off-season is they'll just do less training because they're pretty tired and they're pretty sore and they need time away from weightlifting. So an off-season for the elite athlete would be different from the off-season from an amateur who probably needs a bit more work capacity, a bit more conditioning, probably needs to work on mobility, probably needs to build a bit more muscle mass, probably needs a bit more strength, probably needs a bit more of every general physical trait that you need for weightlifting. Might I suggest looking at a video we made a couple of weeks ago, which was you're not athletic enough for weightlifting. I pulled my adductor. I know you don't answer injury questions, but this is a real simple one. Would you completely lay off training legs or just do, Nicholas, or just do the amount that doesn't hurt to build back up? I'll repeat the multi-step process for rehabbing injuries that is general, non-specific. Number 1 is don't panic. Number 2 is to see someone who can help you with the injury. Number 3 is adjust load as necessary so you're not hurting yourself again. And then number 4 is do rehab and prehab where needed. That is the general answer I would give to all injury questions. No worries, Banana Bread. Thanks for answering questions, or asking questions. Hello, Dr. Fridge. I'm not a doctor. We can't sell peptides. We've been over this. What's the deal with Jiu-Jitsu folks being so resistant to S&C? I know what the S&C for elite grapplers improves, but the average butt scooter remains very unhorse-like. Is the difference in the acceptance for S&C now compared to 5 years ago in Jiu-Jitsu is absolutely night and day. It's actually incredible how different the discourse is for strength training for Jiu-Jitsu now compared to 5 years ago. You wouldn't believe how resistant people were. Now it's more of a case is that most people can accept that it's better for you, but the problem is most butt scooters are just do not want to let go of training. They do not want to get low of rolling. They do not want to take downtime from jiu-jitsu because they feel like they'll get worse. They feel like they'll be less specific. They'll be out of shape. Other people are going to get better than them. There's competitions all year round. They have to keep training. But then that's why you get people blowing out meniscuses, ACLs, back injuries, tearing extensors in their forearm, tearing out your shoulders, ripping things apart. It's just need to take some time away. So the problem now is not that they don't think S&C will help. It's the problem that sometimes they actually add the S&C on top of the rolling and then keep training, and then they get injured as well because the training load is too much. So now it's a case of accept, yes, good, but cannot take time away from training. It's just, it's a disease. They're very good at it, jiu-jitsu, a lot of these people. So it's hard for them to let go of that, to take a few steps back temporarily, to take a couple of steps forward. What you a lot of times will see is, especially of the generations kind of who've been doing it for decades, they'll be like, yeah, I kind of wish I did more SC when I was younger. I'm doing a lot now and I feel way better, but I probably wouldn't have as many injuries if I did it before. But I suppose that's the problem with youth, isn't it? They never listen. They never listen. Nerve irritation. That's Joey, we don't do injury questions on the live streams. No, I'm sure you're new, Joey. So we can't help you. I can't help you. Even if I had an iota, I couldn't help you here because I have no idea what could be causing nerve irritation around the SI joints. Repeat process again. Don't panic. Go see someone who can help you. Reduce training loads so you're not hurting that area too much. Do rehab, prehab where needed. Would you consider brisk walking with the heaviest bag as zone 2? The easiest way to find this out accurate is to find your max heart rate and then record what your heart rate gets up to during zone 2. I'm going to say no, is my answer. Now, if you're doing a brisk walk with 15, 20 kilos, then you probably get brisk zone 2, but you'd want to be doing that fairly consistently. So I'm going to say probably not unless it's pretty heavy. Is your RTA2 and pull program together a good idea? I'm planning on starting both in 2 weeks after I work and getting back into training. I think you should be fine. Definitely people have ran the squat and the deadlift programs together before and worked out very well. So if you're in good shape and you're prepared, you'll be okay. What percentage of people can reach 200 plus kilos in the back squat? So our most up-to-date data says it's less than 8%. And that's of a very biased pool of people who are already strength training. So it's probably half that or less. Which is still pretty good when you think about it. What's the idea behind accessory programming? Volume, push the intensity, do things that you need to do. Is there a specific thing you're looking for, Sam? Tips for a strongman to improve aerobic capacity and reduce resting heart rate quickly without impacting strength training. High intensity interval training. Get on the assault bike. Norwegian 4x4. Do it twice a week. It is so fucking useful. Joey Schmoey. Norwegian 4x4 on the assault bike. For a strongman, this would be perfect as well because it's going to keep all the load off your joints. You don't need any technique. And you'll see a drastic improvement in your aerobic capacity. Now, improve your resting heart rate might not necessarily correspond with that because if you are high blood pressure and you're out of shape and you're very fat, I'm not profiling strongmen here, but reducing resting heart rate will take a lot of work long term. Resting heart rate's quite slow to go down, but start with the interval training and you won't look back. Excuse me. Dara hates searchers. I hate searchers as well. What do you think of them in the context of building confidence in an athlete with a history of lower back injury? Can they make you confident in a compromised spot? Yeah, I'm willing to. So back injuries are really interesting, right? Obviously a lot of back pain is physiological and it's undeniable and you need to rehab it around that. But sometimes what happens when people have chronic back pain is they get kind of afraid of lifting and hurting it again, which is understandable. Chronic pain is a dreadful thing. And that's why we have opioids. But in those scenarios, I'm willing to people do whatever they can. I don't actually generally mean, I don't mean painkillers. In terms of training, if, for example, search or deadlifts help you get your confidence back and if helped with the rehab, then I'm okay. I've seen lots of weird things in prehab and rehab and mobility and all that crack. So if it helps you get back, then I'm happy for you. would be something that'd be a go-to for that. Depends on the scenario. But if that really works for you, Scarecrow, then I'm happy for it. If you can't in an already state, thoughts on heavy trap bar squats for field sports athletes? Who is that guy? Thanks for all content. Thoughts on heavy trap bar squats for field sport athletes? Yeah, trap bar deadlift, definitely something that features somewhat frequently in our programs for field sport athletes. It's a good way of moving heavier weight in the in-season without actually being super taxing on a specific point, specifically the lower back. So the heavy trap bar deadlift can move heavy weight, and ultimately if you're moving a decent weight over a reasonable range of motion, you are getting some benefit to that athlete when it comes to just muscular recruitment. Okay. Unless there's a question. Oh, okay. I'm going to close up shop in a minute or two, so get your questions in if there's no more. If I'm programming myself, how can I decide which exercise to put as accessory and what am I looking to get from them? So simply looking at what you probably need the most. So if you're weightlifting and your overhead is really weak in the snatch and the jerk, do lots of pressing, do lots of direct arm and shoulder work. If you are back squatting and you can feel a discrepancy from one side to the other, or your quad drive is really poor, then looking at what needs to be done in terms of the quad assistance work, like is it Bulgarian split squats, is it a belt squat, is it high bar squats if you're low bar squatting. So just find the problem area, you've probably got multiple ones, and then focus on the assistance work that's needed for those. Flat shoes and heel shoes for squatting. If an athlete has favorable leverages, can squat 200 kilos with flat shoes, then he can maintain his practice and only use heel shoes for it. No, use them. Everyone squats better in heel shoes, essentially. I can squat lots in flat shoes, but my squat is still better in heel shoes. There's no reason really to do that, and it'll give you a better transfer because you want to hit those similar positions on your squat as compared to the Olympic lifts. Have you all at Sika Strength observed the rise of Lucas Hatman in Strongman? Absolutely. Yeah, we've definitely seen his. I think he did the high volume squats and he also did the big behind the neck jerks as well. So definitely seen Lucas. All right. Everyone give me a like before you leave on the live stream. Give me a like.
Like the stream.
Like the stream, please and thank you. If there's a video you really wanted to see from Sika Strength, you're like, oh, I wish I saw that video. Let us know before I go. Jeez, Ross Edgley is some unit, isn't he? Finished the swim.
Is he done?
Yeah, he did 1,000 miles around Iceland.
Holy moly.
He's finito. Right. I think that's all. Wow, I'm just not seeing the likes go up. So yeah, it's so weird. Okay. Enjoy your day, everyone. We'll talk to you later. Thanks for all the questions. We'll be back again soon. Bench press videos up next for the YouTube. Don't forget you get the app at app.sikastrength.com for all your programming needs.